Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla. Coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides with Schla. And today this is a no, this is not pleasant. Coming back to these days again. Coming back to these days. Great. Alright, anyways. I was just thinking about a bunch of things. It was like a bunch of flurry of thought. And then I'd forgot, but then I'd remembered again. So I think the first thing I thought about was well, lost it again. Shame. Shame. It's a shame. What was I going to think of? Oh, I remember now. I'm honestly just tired of people. You know, like here I was like really trying to make humanity better, trying to be conscious, thinking, doing all this like good stuff, really good work. And it just got shattered, you know. I know I was talking about this yesterday, but just to elaborate on it further. It got shattered and now it's like I'm finally free. I'm finally not really doing anything for anybody else. You know, like this show is for myself, but it is by extension for others. You know, like I had explained, its original intention was actually still a selfless act in theory. That was like you remember the original vision, like, oh, well, instead of trying to help one person, I could help multiple people because I can put out this basically simulation of having a conversation with someone. Because there probably is content like this, but it's essentially replicating what a conversation would be like. And I think that's more future proof than actually trying to talk to people. So on a mass scale, you now have a person's logs or notes about things, and now you can interact with someone as if you are friends with them, but hopefully in a more personable way than, a lot of times there's a bit more of a facade over top of it. But I tried to fix humanity. I tried to help so many people, and I just realized, people are terrible. They're just terrible people, and it's interesting. I haven't really pinpointed it super accurately. I've mainly been looking at it through an ignorant, evil axis, but I think it's more potent and specific to point out memory as being the paramount flaw with humanity, because it is. It's people's inability to remember things that causes basically every issue I bring up. A lack of memory directly correlates with a lack of gratitude. I can't believe I never thought of it before. And so when you look into how insufficient humans are at the preservation of memories, you realize why I've had all the struggles that I've had. And it's that there's really, it's not likely there's going to be a person who is able to satisfy me at this point. Whether that's a friend, whether that's, and I guess it was just a lot of pain to get to this transitory phase where now I actually feel better suited for this world, because before I didn't. Before I was very upset, wasn't really a great situation, and all that good stuff. It was just not a great situation for me. And I wished I was born more in the past. I wished a lot of this stuff. But here we are, Now I kind of feel like I'm adjusting with the times more now that I'm embracing the future. And there's still a lot of things that I don't like. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely the fair share of things I'm not going to like about people. And, I still think there's a lot of rules that need to be put into place. And people are, a lot of people really, I think, need a pretty substantial punishment, especially older people, for what they've done to my generation in terms of like really shooting us in the foot hard. Like they lodged like multiple bullets in our feet, and then they got like balloons lifting themselves up. How's that fair? But a lot of people don't even realize it. But I just wanted to, I guess, take note of that. That's how I'm feeling this morning. It feels good to finally find my independence. And I don't know why it took so long to get to this point, because I could have been doing this for years. I had so much time, energy, and ability to record, and I didn't. And it really makes you wonder. And that's all I have to say. It really makes you wonder, like, what... I don't know. I mean, my life would probably be a world of difference if I had been doing this since I was... who knows, 12? I mean, think about that. Think about how the massive catalog of just so much. I mean, I would be on top of the world right now. My channel probably would already be, but I just didn't do it. And like my whole life, and I think that's a part of my plan, my fate, but it's still like a frustrating thing to know. I just wasn't meant for it. I was meant for like a period of confusion, I guess, because it does create a different character. Obviously, I would be an entirely different person if I was doing that and well put together. Maybe it wouldn't really be as compelling of a story, who knows. But and it might be symbolic that there's lost content from that past. But the whole point is, at least now, even though I don't really have anybody to talk to, it's okay. I'm becoming more at peace with it. And you've seen, I mean, it's been a direct... You haven't seen it too much on this show, because really this show was kind of the beginning of the end of that. Of realizing... Because, yes, like, people, in my view of what people are, in relationships are amazing. They're the highest form of humanity. But only if the people within it, if you're in communication with a terrible person, that's just not good. That's not going to be a good result. Things you have to think about. Definitely things you have to think about. People don't. But see, for a lot of people, it's easier for them to function because of their poor memory. So they have the same poor memory as everybody else, so they don't get bothered. Like, I get bothered by people who try to socialize, but then they end up leaving. Like, oh, it's like you tried being friendly with someone, and then you never see that person again. That really ticks me off. It really makes me deeply upset. Like, I think if you're even going to bother to open your mouth, you better stick with that person. Ride or die, like, no matter what. But what I realize is most people are so much more confined to their ego and, like, their opinions about things. Like, don't get me wrong. I do have some opinions. But and some people might say I'm an opinionated person, but I respectfully disagree with that. I think that I care about an adherence to an objective. And of course, like anybody, there's bias to my judgment. I understand that. But that's why I change my opinion. Because I don't, I know that there's some things that I view incorrectly, or like things change. And then, you have to adapt to a new truth, right? So that's why I say I really don't want to say I'm opinionated. It's just I care about adhering to what's right. I care about adhering to what's true, and that can be different things. That's not always the same thing or the same perspective or the same ideology. But other people, what I realize is like they're incredibly opinionated, and I think short-sighted is a good term. Like people, they're very short-sighted. It's like if they have their tribal views, and like in order to bond with somebody, they have to have something in common. You know what I'm saying? Whereas with me, it's like I don't even need anything in common. I could, if necessary, try to bond with some, but the other person wouldn't reciprocate. That's the whole point I'm saying, is that people are very stuck in their own shell, in their own shells, if you will. And so you don't really see them. You don't really get to see people for who they are. You get this like primitive view of people. Don't really know how else to explain it, but yeah, it's like you get this like view of a person that, just mindlessly, flailingly argue. And I can't believe that, because there's people that get in arguments and then like just ghost people and stuff. I've never done that, not once. Like anytime I argue with a person, I'm available, I'm there. I don't just like cut contact because of like a bad argument or something, but the other person will. The other person will like, grow a rage about you and become dissatisfied or unsatisfied. I think I recently, I want to look up I don't know if I'm going to remember to do this, but the difference between dissatisfied and unsatisfied is, because I want to know what's the correct usage for those, but I don't think I'm going to remember to do it, so don't hold me to it, but I'm mentioning it. And yeah, that's really the problem with people is they're too, and the other issue with this whole tirade I'm going on, which is another word I don't know if I'm using correctly, but I think I'm using correctly. This tirade that I'm going on is I've never liked it. Like this like hate people vibe. Oh, I don't like people. People are bad. People suck. Like that kind of vibe. Like I never really wanted to say those things, because I do love people. I love people so much, but they're not who they should be or how they should be, if that makes sense. Like and I guess I've had to learn the hard way that humans are just not all they're cracked up to be. But I don't want to act like this is like, because I really, it does tick me off when just like regular people make those kind of statements like, no, it's likely that people are no good because of yourself. In my case, it isn't, because in my case, it's a difference of like, I'm too caring, I'm too much, and so there's inevitably either I'm too overwhelming for people, or they can't reciprocate the level of care I give them. Like, that's a totally different and very rare occurrence. For most people, it's just a mixture of really poor communication on both parties' part, and so that I don't really have a respect for like lazy antisocial behavior. But as for me, it's like very difficult to look past it, I guess, because I keep living life and I try to be positive, but it keeps kind of circling around to the same emotional hurt, But I know I wanted to be positive. It's just positivity comes with a rejection of the self, I think. But maybe that's not even a bad thing, Because that's kind of where you get into ego and even my own pride, I guess, of trying to just be positive, have a good outlook despite what you could know or could think. It's, the idea of like eating the fruit in the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil. You do gain knowledge and perspective of things, but the ignorance was bliss. So I think you can apply that principle in real life as well. And I guess for people like me, it is what was I going to say? Yeah, it's like more apparent. Like there's more apparent of a difference. But I don't know, like I said, I that law of attraction stuff, I have some issues with it, even if it's true. I think this actually nicely goes into the second point that I had forgot about, but it just came to me. So I'd originally forgotten about what I was going to say. Because if you remember in the beginning, I said I had two things to talk about. Well, we really only talked about one of them and then we got sidetracked. But the second point is just how poor and little human progress there's been. Isn't it crazy? Like we've progressed. Well, I don't know why I'm saying progressed. Wait, well, actually, which one is correct? Now I'm like tripping myself out. Progress or progress? Not really sure which one sounds better or whatever. Progress or progress? There's basically been no human progress in the past years, and I think that's very sad because we have such a tremendous potential, but people just aren't modernizing, and I don't think their brains even know what to do with it. There's just so much that like our system is actually way ahead of where people are at mentally. That's like the big problem. Because there should be a lot more taxes and like rules and things. I think I've mentioned before a tax if you have like a large home and like nobody living in it. That should be a pretty massive tax. Leisure transportation should be some kind of a tax. Those are like two huge, major taxes they should really implement immediately, but, they don't do that because they're still in the fantasy of freedom. And just like, well, if you can't see that it's a problem, then it's not a problem. That's really the problem with humans, and that's why systemic issues are so hard to bring up and talk about. That's why. Because people can't see them or understand them very well at all. People aren't really capable of that. Because it's not like apparent, so it's unless you're like me and you're thinking about it, you're not going to think about it. And so there's an inherent disparity where people who are aware of the systemic issues and understand that the system is broken are constantly fighting an uphill battle because the people you're trying to talk to and explain to can't even comprehend like what a system even is, or like how things work, or again, like my point about voting and stuff. It's like a lot of these people, they just don't even get it. There's no comprehension. There's nothing going on there. That's what's interesting, right? That is what's interesting. I think the tired is starting to set in. I actually woke up pretty well today. Pretty surprised and happy about that. Not perfect, but almost perfect. You take what you can get. Take what you can get. Yeah, there are some people today, let me tell you, like these people are not. These people are in a hurry. We're in a hurry. We're flashing high beams. We're in big trucks. I mean, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I actually think too. I don't need to verify this with GPT, but I guess I will if I remember to. The most efficient speed for a truck, based on aerodynamics, is probably way lower than a regular car because of how tall they are and how unaerodynamic they are. So what I'm curious about is if they specifically optimize trucks and their transmissions for high speed travel because they know the car could really be more like 80 miles per hour. Do they like tune the transmission a certain way and the engine a certain way to be more of an upward efficiency? That's what I would think, because I know for cars they probably don't, because you're not really supposed to be going 80. Like most cars, it's like 50 to 60 is the least air resistance, and probably, I mean, I'm being a little generous with 50 to 60. Of course, the more sporty the car is designed, the more the higher speed is the optimal speed. The smaller it is, that's going to reflect that. And then the bigger and chunkier, less aerodynamic, boxier ones, it's going to be a lower speed. But that's just for wind resistance. But I do think wind resistance is a pretty big factor, and it starts going up exponentially. So in an ideal world, you probably... Well, see, this is a complicated question. Yeah, this is definitely a question for GPT, because you have to think about what overall is the lower cost per like usage of the vehicle. So again, presumably, I would estimate, I mean, a truck, I don't know if a diesel engine is different. I can't really imagine it is, because we're talking about air resistance, and air resistance starts becoming a deterrent quickly. So when you're going if you're like, I'm sure in that truck the optimal like, you know what I'm talking about, big trucks, not like just a pickup truck, like a truck. I'm forgetting the name. I don't know why I'm feeling like very silly right now. It's a tractor trailer. There we go. I can't believe I wasn't getting that. Yeah, like big, tall trucks. Like, there's no way those are efficient past 40s. There's no way. There's no way wind resistance doesn't start like kicking in hard. There's no way they hit 50 as like an ideal mile per hour for efficiency. But what I'm saying is, and it probably would affect longevity of the car too. But you have to do that calculus between, if you're going 80 miles per hour, you're spending less time on the road, which potentially helps that would help the longevity of the car. But if you're going 45 instead of 80, that also would presumably help the longevity of the car, because you're just putting it under way less strain. So it's a complicated question for GPT. I'm probably going to end up copying this transcript and pasting it in, because I'm very curious to see what the answer is. But yeah, I know it's like you don't really think about these things, but what would be a better system? Like, would it be worth it for us to institute like a 50 mile per hour truck speed limit? But I mean, packages would end up shipping a lot slower. You'd probably need, some more truckers, and that's not necessarily a good, occupation necessarily. I'm sorry, I just got a flurry of unrelated thoughts, so I just wasn't talking for a bit. But yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, because I'm sure like these truck drivers go fast, because they're probably not really paid enough, and they're probably paid off of how much they accomplish. So they're incentivized to just drive fast. But I wonder what would actually make like a better world. That's really what I'm thinking about. A better world. Because that's really what we need. But same goes for everybody else. I mean, I'd have to imagine that if there was a reinstated 55 federal speed limit and everybody followed that, we would use less gasoline, and cars probably would last longer, even if it's just slight. I think so. Like, I have, again, unless there's specific, I just think of the Corvette, because that's like the most accessible car that's designed like that. Of course, a Corvette, the efficient range is probably in the 60s. Like, I doubt it's in the 50s, just because of how it's designed. But yeah, I can't believe like how like people do not think about this stuff. That's like the whole problem. People just don't even consider it. Like, through their day-to-day life, I don't know what they would do. I don't know what they would do on their car ride with Schla. What would other people do on their car ride? Which I know people listen to music. People just, I guess they listen to content. Some people it's probably quiet, but there's other schlas out there doing what schla do, you know? There's other people out here, I'm sure, who do the same thing as me. They just talk. A lot of truckers actually, I think, have, you know, like they record YouTube videos while they drive, so it's not something out of the question at all. I slipped into fifth. Silly. I had no reason to do that. Just wasn't really paying attention. I got a little off the rails there. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of humans, they also do humor out of boredom. And I just think my boredom isn't necessarily quenched from humor. Like, my boredom is more quenched from satisfaction or, like, you know, that kind of stuff. That's really what, to me, what boredom, like, humor does not, I don't think it captivates me all that much, you know? It just seems like something that's not too good. And again, the use cases for humor are often just inferiorities of a social species, smoothing over tension, you know, these various things. It's not really anything good that comes from it. We'd still be better off without it. And it's a shame because laughter is good for us, but there would probably be a way to just induce laughter without humor. You know, that would be like a good system. Yeah, for sure. We could just find a way to like medically induce excess laughter. That's totally going to be a thing in the future. Like, it's like a drug, but it really doesn't do anything other than increase laughter sensitivity. So it's like very natural. And that, I mean, that would obviously make you feel good if you started laughing a ton. You know, it would just obviously improve your mood, make you feel better. It's one of the best feeling things we have access to, so makes sense. Whoa, there are a slew of cars behind me. That is not usually the case. What is going on? Wow, that's crazy. Glad I squeezed in when I did. This is just crazy. Well, it's another day. Kind of weird timing to think that, but guess we're kind of almost to work. I just ended up getting there like the same time as yesterday. That's fine. But yeah, so that was the main point I want. Like, it is true. Humanity is not progress. Like, people are really not. There hasn't not been a proportionate amount of progression. There's just been a lot of, like, greed. Like, we're getting greedier and more self-centered. But not that much progress has actually been made. You know, that peaked at some point. prior. So yeah, it is what it is, but it's a shame and it's weird. I mean, a lot of this too is the free market. It's like businesses not really modernizing or adapting to like newer things. So when you have that, you're not going to be making much progress. You know, because it's just you just can't. Because there's just, with a free market, you have the freedom. Like, you think that a free market would be growth oriented, but it's actually not. Like, it's really not at all. The way a free market works is it's money oriented, which means businesses are typically going to be incentivized to do whatever's cheap, not necessarily whatever's good or whatever's optimal for whatever economy or thing. Like, it doesn't really pan out that way. So a lot of these people talk about a free market, a market that is restricted or regulated, but with a bias towards a market that's restricted or regulated, but with a bias towards, you know, being regulated in a good way. That's really vastly superior to a free market. I mean, what good is a free market? It doesn't really lead to optimal growth or anything like that. Because again, a lot of times, like, businesses are incentivized to be lazy and to cut costs and things like that's what businesses are incentivized to do. They're not. It doesn't lead to more growth. It's not like humans are inherently good at like, am I really crazy? Like, it's just like, what is this? You think that, or you'd think that. Well, I guess taxes do, taxes on businesses. That is like a valid point. Obviously, if you had taxed businesses less, then they're gonna have more money to grow or whatever. But I'm talking about, like, in basically any other way, a business does not just grow more from having like less rules. A lot of times the people at the top just it actually leads to like inefficiencies. So, and even the tax argument, like, oftentimes you see issues with that. You see that the funds don't necessarily get used properly. And so that's like the whole argument is that I'm getting to, is it's really human leadership that's a problem. Humans are just not good at leading, and they might be good at selfish things like preserve, like, I guess they, you think that humans are good at, since they're good at preserving self-interest, that they are also good at preserving like a business's self-interest. But I don't really think that's what that actually translates to, in the real world. Just my casual opinion, though, of course. Because what do I know? What do I know? But yeah, I don't but that's really what I see as like the next problem is, getting AIs into people and correcting them, because you can't have business leaders just like making haphazard, incorrect decisions that aren't for the greater good, and then, just because they're a business leader now all of a sudden it's fine. Like we can't. You just can't do that. I don't know. And the fatigue is kicking in. The fatigue is kicking in. And we got a lot of work to do today. I have so many. I'm gonna done at this rate. I have so many videos I have to do. I have to upload and do for the. Because now I do the walk switch law. It's insane. It's crazy, but I guess that's how it is. All right, well, I think that we're pretty much at that point. I was okay with today's episode. Really long. I guess it took me. Always that long? I don't really think it's always that long. Maybe I was driving kind of slow, because that seems a little bit ridiculous, actually. Like, ridiculously slow, honestly. I don't know. I don't know. Alright. Anyways, it's been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So, see you schla.